students, today we will be talking about the food safety laws. We are going to discuss this module under the brief history of the Indian food laws. We are going to see the objectives of this Food Safety and Standard Act. We are going to highlight the salient features of FSSA. Then we are going to talk about the regulatory framework. We are also going to talk about the provisions which have been included under this and also understand how this law is different or this act is different from the PFA. We are also going to emphasize on the new rules and regulations which have been incorporated in this act, which was there in the year 2006, and also we are going to see the relationship of the act with the international laws and guidelines. Now, when we start talking about this particular law, we need to understand prior to the British rule in India, there was no uniform food law in the country. Once the British rulers they came to our country, the food regulations were changed significantly, and this was in the year 1834. This act was known as UPPAA, which stands for United Provincial Prevention of Adulteration Act. This was enacted by the British government. After India got independence, the subject of food adulteration was incorporated as entry number 18 of the 7th schedule of the Indian Constitution. Later on, centre and states, they adopted the legislation on the subject of food adulteration. When we talk about the food laws in India, till recent decade, we were talking about Prevention of Food Adulteration Act 1954. After the enactment of PFA, various orders under the Essential Commodity Act 1955 were also enacted to control the production, supply and distribution of essential food commodities like milk and milk products, vegetable oils, fruits and food products. Consequently, the powers to control various food articles went to various ministries and departments of the Government of India. But keeping in view the international developments and how the dynamics of the world trade were changing in the food sector, the Department of Health started the process of making suitable amendments in the PFA Act. A standing committee of Parliament on Agriculture in the year 2005 suggested that there is a need for an integrated food law. And on the basis of the report, the Food Safety and Standard Bill in 2005 was presented before the Parliament by the Ministry of Food Processing Industries. The Food Safety and the Standard Acts 2006, which is also said in short FSSA, was passed by both the Houses of Parliament, and then the consent of the President was taken in the year 2006. Now, coming over to the salient features of SSA, there was a major shift from the multi-departmental control to a single integrated line of command. This particular act integrated various laws such as the PFA, the fruit product order, the meat product order, vegetable oil product order, edible oil packaging regulation, milk and milk product order and others. The Food Safety and Standard Act in the year 2006 was passed by the Indian Parliament and notified on August 24, 2006. The authority was established in September 2008, followed by the regulation which came in year 2011, that is FSS regulation, and was notified on 3rd of August. The new act was put into operations on 5th August 2011, and in India all food business operators were announced to get license or registration with the Food Safety Authority of India. When we talk about this Food Safety and Standard Act 2006, we should be understanding what were the objectives of this act. The first one was to consolidate the laws related to food and to establish single reference point. Point 2 or objective 2 was to establish Food Safety and Standards Authority of India for laying down the science-based standards of food. The third was to regulate the manufacture, storage, distribution, sale and import of food. And the fourth one was to ensure availability of safe and wholesome food for human consumption and for matters connected with it. FSSA was a single act under which all the other small acts were integrated. And the FSSAI was a single reference point for all the matters related to food safety, standards and enforcement. This was one act where there were maximum number of stakeholders which were related to foods, so that there was an adequate representation of them in the Food Safety Authority of India. They were the farmers, they were the consumer organizations, they were the scientific panels. So this act made sure that it's very inclusive. FSSA is regulated by FSSAI, which has the headquarters at New Delhi, and there are a number of regional offices for enforcement of license and import. When we talk about the FSSA, we also talk about FSSAI. This FSSAI authority has a chairperson and number of members. It also has a chief executive officer. It has a central advisory committee and number of scientific panels and scientific committees. We have the directors at Delhi and various assistant directors also at the regional offices. Food Safety and Standard Act is very important because it helps in the achievement of consumer confidence in the quality and safety of food. Food business operators are responsible for providing safe and wholesome food to the consumers. We do have an enforcement machinery to keep regular watch through entire food chain. Otherwise, a legal action is taken against defaulters, and we also have a process which is very prompt and time bound. This is one act which is investor friendly. It gives the regulatory mechanism with emphasis on self-regulation. There is a gradual shift from the regulatory regime to self-compliance. The food business operators at every stage of the food chain is liable to meet the requirement of the Food Safety and Standard Act. This act also encompasses the rules and the various regulations which are being added time to time. This act also takes care of maintenance of hygienic conditions in the entire food chain and also assessment and management of risk factors to human health. A very important key feature of this Food Safety and Standard Act is that we have penalties which are graded on the basis of the gravity of the offence. We can have a fine up to 5 lakhs starting from 1 lakh. This act is enforced by FSSAI along with the state and union territory food authorities. When we talk about this Food Safety and Standard Act, it incorporates the salient provisions of the PFA, the shift from the regulatory regime to self-compliance, and how this is achieved is that we are adopting the food safety management systems at all stages of the food chain. When we talk about these food safety management systems, they not only talk about the quality aspect, they also talk about the safety aspect. Under the quality aspect, we have various types of components such as internal requirements of a company, the legal and the mandatory requirements of the country, customer requirements, and to build a safety aspect we have added the good hygienic practices and HACCP, that is Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point System. When we talk about the specific provisions under the Food Safety and Standard Act, we have compensation to the consumers, we also have reward to the informer, we have also very important part of food safety, that is the recall mechanism, and also we are overriding the effect of FSSA over all the other food related laws till date. The other major changes and differences from the PFA are, there is a change in definition of misbranded food, unsafe food, advertisements, food, what is a food business, what is a food business operator, and what do we mean by a food manufacturer. It is very different from the earlier act, that was the PFA Act. Under PFA, we had several authorities. Under FSSA, we have a single authority. There we were talking about adulteration of food. Now the focus is on the safety of food. The earlier act was opinion based. The new one is more science based. The PFA was only based on inspection, whereas the Food Safety and Standard Act 2006 is based on surveillance and monitoring. When we talk about Food Safety and Standard Act 2006, various regulations have been incorporated such as Food Safety and Standards, that is Packaging and Labeling Regulation 2011. Packaging regulation provides the minimum standards to which packaging of food articles must adhere in order to maintain cleanliness and hygiene and be fit for human consumption. We have separate regulations for food import, that is the Food Import Regulation 2016. Then we have a regulation again in 2016 which is for food product standards and food additives. Then we have a very important regulation which has been added in the year 2016, that is about health supplements, nutraceuticals, food for special dietary use, food for special medical purposes, functional foods and novel foods. When we talk about the Food Safety and Standard Act, which is at the national level and which takes care of our country, there is also a role of international standards. We are either following the rules which are given by the Indian Pharmacopoeia, or we are taking the rules which are laid down by the ICMR. But when we talk about the international standards, they are prescribed by the Codex Alimentarius, and we also talk about other international standards which are the sanitary and the phytosanitary measures given by the World Trade Organization. Now, what is Codex Alimentarius? Very popular, very well known organization across the globe. This was developed by FAO, that is the Food and Agriculture Organization, and WHO in the year 1961-62. This deals with standardizing food norms and creating guidelines internationally. The purpose is to protect the health of consumers, ensure fair practices in the food trade, promote coordination of all food standard work which is undertaken by international governments and non-government organizations. We also see this contribution of this as Part 5 of Schedule 4 of the Food Safety and Standards Regulation 2011, which is part of the Food Safety and Standard Act 2006. The other international guideline which is very important to India as a country is the WTO sanitary and phytosanitary measures. These deal with the animal and plant standards. These talk about sanitary, that is for human and animal health, and phytosanitary for plant health. These measures, they apply to domestically produced food or local animals and plant diseases, as well as to the products which are coming from other countries. The measures can take many forms, such as requiring products to come from a disease-free area, inspection of products. We can also give specific treatment or processing to the products. We have to see the settings. We have to give a allowable maximum level of pesticide residues. We have to also talk about permitted use of only certain additive in the food. This module is very important because this act has integrated the laws relating to food in our country. The Food Safety and Standard Authority has been made a single point for all matters related to food safety, standards and enforcement. FSSAI has been constituted under this particular act, and this has resulted in a shift from multi-departmental control to a single integrated line of command. The Food Safety Standard Rules and Regulation 2011 and Food Import Regulation 2016 have been added to carry out the provision of this act more effectively, and FSSA, that is a Food Safety Act, is also in sync with international regulations and guidelines. Well, laws and acts are always a dynamic process, so several other new regulations are under process at FSSAI. Thank you so much.